Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Lee, and I just want to welcome everyone. It is now 1 p.m., so we'll begin our presentation shortly. Today on March 22nd, we'll have our presentation with Ethics Skit. For help during today's webcast, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box found in the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen, or call 1-800-263-6317. Here is a list of sponsoring chapters, divisions, and universities. I would like to thank all of the participating chapters, divisions, and universities for making these webcasts possible. These are the list of upcoming webcasts. To register for these upcoming webcasts, please visit utahapa.org/webcast. We're now offering distance education webcasts to help you get your ethics or law credits before the end of the year. These webcasts are available to view at utahapa.org webcast archive. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook to receive up-to-date information on the Planning webcast series sponsored by chapters, divisions, and universities. We also upload previous presentations on YouTube. To log your same credits for attending today's webcast, please go to planning.org/cm. Select today's date, then select today's webcast. This is available for 1.5 CM credit. At this time, I'd like to send it over to Delaware chapter and start with an audio recording of the first skit.
Good afternoon. Good morning to those west of here. Welcome to this certification maintenance webinar for the continuing education of certified planners. I'm Peter Von Glahn of the Delaware chapter of the American Planning Association. Today we will address the ethical responsibilities of being a certified planner. This webinar has the following format. We will begin with an overview of the AICP Code of Ethics by Glenn Larson, who is the AICP Commissioner elected from Region 2. Then we will present 2 radio plays addressing various aspects of the code. Each play will be followed by a live panel discussion of the play. In addition, this will give you an opportunity to ask questions or to make comments. We suggest that you have a copy of the Code of Ethics handy for reference as you consider the issues raised in the skit. The code is available at the APA website at planning.org/ethics. Please participate in the discussion, asking questions or sharing your thoughts on the violations of the Code of Ethics that we illustrate. This session may be counted for 1 1/2 CM ethics credits. Please remember to visit planning.org to update your credits after today's presentation. Because of the nature of this webcast, parts of it are pre-recorded. If you have questions or observations, type them into the question box at the top of your screen, and we will attempt to cover them when we go live. Now on with the show. Glenn Larson has 23 years serving the Virginia chapter of APA and currently serves as the AICP Commissioner for Region 2. We have asked him to introduce the topic for us today.
Welcome. I'm Glenn Larson, AICP Commissioner elected from Region 2. I'd like to thank the APA Delaware chapter for inviting me to give this brief introduction to the AICP Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct before Delaware chapter members embark on a few ethics skits for the remainder of this webinar. One caveat, this is a recording. I'm away from my office this week, so I'm coming to you through the miracle of pre-recorded PowerPoint. I may not be live, but I've been assured this is ethical. For many of us, this is the latest of many ethics sessions we've viewed since the institution of the AICP Certification Maintenance Program. While we are covering familiar ground today, it is important ground and warrants at least an annual refresher. Much of what I'm reviewing comes directly, almost verbatim, from APA's Toolkit for Conducting Ethics Sessions. It's a good resource, and I'll list where to find it and other ethics-related resources at the end of my presentation. As with many things these days, this presentation comes with a standard disclaimer, and I quote directly from the Toolkit's Ethics Session Guidelines. This session has been created to provide general education regarding the AICP Code of Ethics. Though examples, sample problems, and question and answer sessions are an important part of illustrating application of the Code's provisions, all certified planners should be aware that only the ethics officer, Paul Farmer, is authorized to give formal advice on the propriety of a planner's proposed conduct. If you have a specific question regarding a situation arising from your practice, you are encouraged to seek the opinion of the ethics officer. Most AICP Code of Ethics sessions start with inspirational quotes, so I've also referenced some to set the tone. Having worked as a planner in Charlottesville, Virginia, I feel obligated to include at least one quote from Thomas Jefferson. Why talk about ethics? Most planners at some point in their career will either work in the public sector or come into close contact with the public sector. Citizens have a right to expect that their planners will help elevate governance, not fall to its more base level. Even when work may be entirely within the private sector, planners have ethical responsibilities to their colleagues, their clients, and their communities. AICP planners belong to the American Institute of Certified Planners and must practice in accordance with standards of practice, including the AICP Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. The current code became effective June 2005, but is a successor code to those that have been in place for professional planners since 1959. Planners have a long history and experience with respect to ethics. Planners are guided by both existing local and sometimes state ethics provisions, but frequently none exist, and planners must exercise common sense, especially with consideration given to the guidance of the aspirational principles in the code. The rules of conduct from the code require that planners abide by those existing governmental provisions, so it is vital for planners to understand them to avoid violating any of the rules, including the Rule of Conduct 25 that was added in 2010. Ethics scenarios are rarely cut and dry and often contain a high level of nuance. Ethics sessions such as this one help develop reasoning and reflection skills that can be applied in everyday situations, as opposed to exclusively communicating a set of rules that must be memorized and adhered to. As we all know, there are two ethics codes associated with APA, and it's important to distinguish between them. The other code, APA's Ethical Principles in Planning, is a guide to ethical conduct for all those who participate in the process of planning as advisors, advocates, and decision makers. Please note that it is a guide and not a code by which individuals may be held accountable. Let's get back to the main topic at hand and briefly review the 4 sections of AICP's Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. Section A contains a statement of aspirational principles that constitute the ideals to which we are committed. We shall strive to act in accordance with our stated principles. However, an allegation that we fail to achieve our aspirational principles cannot be the subject of a misconduct charge or be cause for disciplinary action. Section B contains rules of conduct to which we are held accountable. If we violate any of these rules, we can be the object of a charge of misconduct and shall have the responsibility of responding to and cooperating with the investigation and enforcement procedures. If we are found to be blameworthy by the AICP Ethics Committee, we shall be subject to the imposition of sanctions that may include loss of our certification. Section C contains the procedural provisions of the code. It, 1, describes the way that one may obtain either a formal or informal advisory ruling, and 2, details how a charge of misconduct can be filed and how charges are investigated, prosecuted, and adjudicated. Section D contains procedural provisions that govern situations in which a planner is convicted of a serious crime. Let's quickly go over the important points in each section. Section A, the principles to which we aspire, focuses on 3 core values: our overall responsibility to the public, our responsibility to our clients and our employers, and our responsibility to our profession and colleagues. Section B outlines our rules of conduct. We adhere to the following rules of conduct, and we understand that our institute will enforce compliance with them. If we fail to adhere to these rules, we could receive sanctions, the ultimate being the loss of our certification. There are 26 rules of conduct, but rather than go over each one, I've summarized them with these major points. I will read Rule 25, though, because it broadly covers any ethical loose ends. Quote, "We shall neither deliberately nor with reckless indifference commit any wrongful act, whether or not specified in the rules of conduct, that reflects adversely on our professional fitness. Bottom line, always do the right thing and understand these rules." Moving on, Section C details code procedures, including the way one may obtain either a formal or informal advisory ethics ruling. Keep in mind that all communications regarding specific situations should occur either in a letter or phone conversation with the APA Chief Executive Officer, Paul Farmer, in his capacity as Ethics Officer. Because of issues of reliability and confidentiality, email communication is not to be used. Direct advice regarding a specific situation may only be given by the Ethics Officer. Chapter presidents, fellows of AICP, PDOs, and others are not authorized to give ethics advice. Here's Paul Farmer's contact information. Once again, contact should be made by regular mail or phone. Then there's Section D, dealing with serious crime. Here's hoping that none of us has to deal with this aspect of the code, but it is important to have a working knowledge of this section. Note that certification and membership shall be suspended upon conviction of a serious crime, and that AICP members are obligated to inform the ethics officer if they are convicted of a serious crime. Finally, members should be aware of the reinstatement process. Finally, check out the APA website for more information about these ethics resources. A new resource, the APA Ethics Case of the Year, presents a series of ethical questions or dilemmas that relate to the Code of Ethics. Check it out. That concludes my introduction. I'd like to once again thank the APA Delaware chapter for giving me this opportunity to review the AICP Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. Ethical principles form the foundation for almost every decision we make as planning professionals. It is therefore vitally important that we, as AICP members, not only know this code, but apply it to best serve the public interest. Thank you.
We now visit the mythical town of Dell, where Joe, the sleazy developer, has another scheme up his sleeve. He has already gotten the city to donate its municipal golf course to him for a new development, despite the best efforts of Debbie, the then new town planner. A few years have passed, and the general economy has taken a nosedive. Dell has not been immune to these problems. Can Joe's super green project save the town in its darkest hour? Let's see as we listen to the Delaware APA Thespians in A Super Green Project for the Town of Dell.
town of Dell is facing a huge budget deficit and is on the fringe of being bankrupted. Joe from Joe's Development LLC is proposing a cutting-edge, super green, mixed-use infill development project that has great short and long-term benefits for the town. However, the land that the project is being proposed on has an historic structure that is known to be where Dell was founded. This proposal has outraged the community. Joe does not have time for a lengthy approval process. He receives stimulus money to complete this project, and he is on a tight timeline to get the project done or the money will be recaptured. Even though Dell's historic farm is in jeopardy, this project will bring much needed revenue to the town amongst other long-term benefits. Debbie, the young planner, has been promoted to be the town's lead planner and has been assigned to present this proposal to the planning commissioners this month. However, little does Deborah know that she will be put once again in an unethical situation where she needs to choose between right and wrong.
Good game, Joe. You too, Mr. Mayor. Sometimes I wish we could still play golf in the old town course, but that new development I built on the land a few years back sure is nice, isn't it?
Sure is, and it generates a lot more taxes than that old municipal golf course, and we need the money.
Listen, I know Dell has really been affected by the economy.
Sure has. We really need to find a new revenue source before we go broke.
Well, listen, I received a large amount of stimulus money to do a cutting-edge, super green mixed-use development that I want to build in Dell. This development will stimulate the economy, provide free electricity for town hall, create jobs, and channel money into other services. But I'm going to propose this on the Stanley Farm.
That farm is on the National Register of Historic Places and has a lot of sentimental value to our town. I mean, the story goes that's the house the town of Dell was founded in.
Don't worry, I'll keep the structure.
Submit your proposal and I'll speak with Deborah, our town planner, to ensure the proposal is expedited to be on the Planning Commission's agenda. You do realize, Joe, this will be a hard proposal to get approved. I mean, that farm has a lot of memories for this town.
I know, but Dell may be no more with the deficit it is experiencing. Listen, Mayor, I need a decision for this proposal within 30 days or else I'll have to take my proposal elsewhere. No threats, but I have a strict timeline to spend the stimulus money within. Just think what a benefit this project will be to the town, the economy, the environment, and of course to Joe's Development LLC. In fact, I have a copy of the proposal right here that you can take to Deborah.
Okay, Joe. I'll see that it gets on the agenda.
The mayor storms into Deborah's office.
Well, good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, Deborah. I need to speak with you immediately. I have a proposal that could save this town. It has something to do with the green development and clean energy. It uses federal funding, so timing is critical. Get with our preservation planner and begin working on this proposal tonight. I want it on the commissioner's agenda for this month's meeting.
Will do, Mr. Mayor.
Here you go. It's all in here.
Hi, Erin. How are you? The mayor just asked that we drop all other projects and work on this proposal. It uses stimulus money that has to be obligated within 30 days, or else the developer will have to go elsewhere with the proposal. They tell me it's cutting-edge, green, mixed-use development that has many benefits, both short and long-term. However, the land it is being proposed on is the Stanley Farm.
I thought the Stanley Farm is the historic heart and soul of Dell.
I need you to do your due diligence and get this proposal ready for a presentation at this month's commission hearing.
Okay, I will start right now. But I'm not sure that all the documentation and studies can be done in time. With all the requirements of Section 106 and the required consultations with the State Historic Preservation Office, I will stay neutral and just stick to the regulations because I can't let my own emotions get mixed up with work. I do really love that farm, though.
Deborah in her office working late on the proposal when the phone rings. It's Deborah's uncle, who she has not spoken to in over 15 years.
Hello?
Debbie, how are you? Hey, bet you don't know who this is. It's your good old Uncle Stan.
Hi, Uncle Stan. Gosh, I didn't think we'd spoken for over 15 years. I didn't know you were out of prison. Is everything all right?
Well, Debbie.
It's Deborah.
Okay, Deborah. I heard you're working on that super green development project. The developer and I have been talking. He wants to build it on my farm and promises huge profits for me if I sell him the farm. Now, I know I'm the black sheep of the family, but you always were nice to me. I have no kids, you know. Deborah, I'm leaving the farm to you in my will, or the profits if I sell the farm to the developer.
How much profit are we talking about?
Oh, 2 to 3 million.
Really? Well, I did just take an 8% pay cut. Uncle Stan, we really shouldn't be talking about this. I have to consider my job first. It's been really good talking to you. Please try to stay out of trouble.
At the town planning office, Deborah calls Erin for an emergency meeting.
Erin, I was up late last night working on the proposal. It's a great proposal, and we just have to get this passed.
But this proposal uses federal funding, and there's no way to comply with the federal Section 106 in 30 days. It can't be done.
Not important for the presentation to the commissioners. Just put those regulations in the appendix, okay?
Yes, will do.
Everyone will have a chance to speak, but you must follow the rules and be respectful. Thank you. First, the developer will give his presentation, then the staff will give their presentation. Then we will take the commissioner's comments before opening to the public hearing. Now, Joe, please give your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's so good to see you all again. As you know, I am Joe of Joe's Development, LLC. During these difficult economic times, I know that the town of Dell and our nation are in a precarious economic predicament. But now is not the time to sit back and hope for the best. We must boldly create new opportunities for economic development and job creation. Fortunately, we can do this while protecting our heritage and saving the environment at the same time. Behold, my proposal for the Stanley Farm. My project will provide office space attracting hundreds of jobs for the town. It will be totally LEED certified, will only use recycled materials, and will generate its own electricity with solar cells and wind turbines. In fact, I will be donating for electricity to power Town Hall, and I am saving the historic structure where our town was first founded. I think you will all agree that this is an outstanding proposal, but it is contingent on federal stimulus funds that I've received, provided that I can get those approvals within 30 days. So I'll need you all to act boldly and to approve my project tonight. If not for me, for the future of Dell.
Thank you, Joe. Now our town planner will present the staff report.
Good evening. I am Deborah, the town planner for Dell. Staff has reviewed this project, and we have found it to have multiple benefits for the town. The project complies with our new green building code and zoning ordinance and would be a model for the region. We are recommending approval under our expedited procedures.
Thank you, Deborah. And Joe, any comments from the commissioners?
Folks, we need jobs and revenue to save this town. I understand that some people may be sentimental about the old Stanley Farm, but at least with the proposal that Joe has presented, he will be saving the house, like what they did with the Winchester House in San Jose, California. This project reflects the new Dell, one that will provide green jobs and clean energy. I, for one, am for it. We must act on it tonight.
Now, just a minute. I'm not ready to throw this town's history away for Joe. Look what he did to our golf course. This whole thing sounds way too good to be true. And why are we being forced to act so quickly?
If you'll just let me interject, the time frames are stipulated by the federal government to get their funding. Hey, don't blame me. I voted for the other guy.
That's not a good enough reason for me. Hey, isn't it required that we follow the federal historic regulations? I didn't see any mention of that in the staff report.
Yes, well, those regulations are discussed on page 43 of the appendix.
What? Page 43 of the appendix?
Well, I can ask Erin, our historic planner, to give you a summary if you would like. She can give you her rationale for putting those requirements in the appendix.
I am Erin, Dell's Historic Preservation Planner. Hi folks, this is the end of the skit. So what am I going to do?
Even though Deborah has earned her AICP since the fiasco with the golf course, she doesn't seem to have remembered much from her previous run-in with Joe. Young Erin has been put in a tough position as a result. What violations of the Code of Ethics has Deborah committed? Although she is not bound by the code, has Erin committed any violations? What should Erin say in front of the potentially hostile Planning Commission? We now turn to our live panel to hear their thoughts, and yours as well, on the play we have just heard. Again, please use the question window at the top of the webcast screen to communicate with the panel. Our panel consists of 4 members and a moderator. Connie Holland, AICP, is the director of the Delaware Office of State Planning Coordination under the leadership of Governor Jack Markell. Connie's office serves as staff to the governor's office and acts as a liaison between state and local governments. She is the former director of the Kent County Planning Office and was responsible for planning, inspections, and GIS. Tony DiGiacomo has worked as an urban planner or a financial planner since 1972 and has served as an officer in the Delaware chapters of the American Institute of Planners, now the APA, and the American Society for Public Administration. Having previously worked in the Wilmington, Delaware Planning Department and the Wilmington Area Planning Council, called WILMAPCO, he is currently the principal planner of Cecil County, Maryland. Tony also is an adjunct professor at Wilmington University and teaches in the Government and Public Policy program. Ed O'Donnell, AICP, is a policy scientist and instructor in the Institute for Public Administration at the University of Delaware. He has over 48 years of professional planning experience in municipal, county, and regional planning. During the last decade, he has worked on various transportation and infrastructure projects, as well as local comprehensive plans and municipal official education programs. Jeff Rigner, AICP and PE, is Vice President of Whitman, Record & Associates and manager of the firm's Wilmington, Delaware office. He has more than 20 years of experience in transportation planning and design, working primarily with public sector clients. Pat Malli, AICP, is the Senior Planner for the Wilmington, Delaware Department of Planning and Urban Design. She has over 25 years planning experience in both public and private sectors. Her specialties include urban design, preservation, housing, planning law, ethics, environmental studies, and public health. She has written hundreds of National Register nominations and architectural analyses and has contributed photos for multiple publications, with the most recent being the cover art for Leaders of Wilmington, Principal Officers of the City of Wilmington, Delaware, 1832 to 2007. And now, here is Pat Malli.
Okay, I'd like to welcome, this is Pat Malli. I'd like to welcome everyone in the listening audience to something that the group that you're about to hear discuss has had quite a bit of fun putting together, which hopefully dismisses the thought that if one is ethical, one has to be rather stuffy about it. If you had heard us in the hour preceding this broadcast, you would certainly have that notion dispelled. What I have done in the preparation for this session is to ask 2 of the folks on the panel to take the lead, 1 per skit, and be prepared to discuss and point out some of the foibles that they found in the overall skit. I do want to take just a moment to thank Dave Edgell and Vicki Powers, who originally captured the ideas that the planning committee had in putting these 2 skits together and putting some of their own wicked sense of humor right in there with it. It always makes life interesting here in Delaware. Okay, what I'd like to do at this point is ask Ed O'Donnell to take the lead on this first discussion and summarize how many ways the participants utterly trampled on our aspirational and our code of ethics.
Thank you, Pat. Wow, where to begin? Let's deal with the aspirational aspects first. If you have a copy of the code in front of you, which was suggested earlier in the program, I think you have to take a look at Section A under aspirational principles. We shall always be conscious of the rights of others. Well, we're certainly not being conscious of the rights of others in dealing with Deborah is dealing with this, either with the public or with our own employees, for that matter. D, we shall provide timely, adequate, clear, and accurate information on the planning issues to the affected persons and to the governmental decision makers. Well, obviously, if it requires more than 30 days to get the historic preservation investigation done, we're not going to have adequate, clear, or accurate information. We shall promote excellence, G. We shall promote excellence of design and endeavor to conserve and preserve the integrity of and the heritage of the natural and built environment. Well, if we're doing short shrift on the historic preservation analysis, we're not exactly doing justice to that historic element and to the heritage. And H, we shall deal fairly with all participants in the planning process. Those of us who are public officials or employees shall also deal even-handedly with all the planning process participants. Again, we're not dealing even-handedly here as you go further into this, especially on some of Deborah's comments to her uncle and possible inheritance and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about the responsibility to our clients and employers. In that section, again, under the Section A, the aspirations, we shall exercise independent professional judgment on behalf of our clients and employers. Well, no, we're not exercising independent judgment here. We're rushing to judgment without all the analysis being done. Let's take a look at also C in there. We shall avoid the conflict of interest or even the appearance of a conflict of interest in accepting assignments from the clients or employers. Bottom line, she probably should have reclused herself immediately as soon as her uncle called. The damage was done when she had the conversation. So from that point, she was out. She should have been out of the equation. Let's go on to our responsibilities to our profession and colleagues. We shall protect and enhance the integrity of our profession. It does neither of that. It doesn't enhance or protect the profession from that standpoint. So those are just some of the more obvious things that we picked out of the aspirational. Let's go to our rules of conduct under B. This one, wow, okay. I'll just read off the numbers, and I'll go back and try and paraphrase some of these. Ones that were more obvious ones that we can identify: 1, 2, 5, 6, 10, 14, 16, 19, 22, and last but not least, 25. Okay, let's go through these a little bit and see where we stand. We should not deliberately or recklessly or with reckless indifference fail to provide adequate, timely, and clear, accurate information on planning issues. Again, they truncated the time for the historic preservation analysis. You cannot do due diligence in that short period of time. It's also probably the requirement under the federal law for more time to be spent. Therefore, you're violating that. We shall not accept an assignment from a client or employer when the services to be performed involve conduct that we know to be illegal or in violation of these rules. If it requires more than 30 days to historic review, why would you accept it? You must point that out. You need to fight that battle right then and there. 5, we shall not, as public officials or employees, accept from anyone other than our public employer any compensation, commission, rebate, or other advantage that may be perceived or related to our public office or employment. It might be a little bit more fuzzy when Uncle Stan got involved here, and I think he really, basically corrupted that whole process right then and there. 6, we should not perform any work on a project for a client or employer if, in addition to upon agreed compensation from our client or employer, there's a possibility for direct, personal, or financial gain. I won't read the rest of it. Right there is all. This woman stands to basically inherit $2 to $3 million if the project goes forward. Number 10, we shall not deliberately nor with reckless indifference misrepresent the qualifications, views, and findings of other professionals. She's kind of indicated that the historic preservation analysis is complete. However, she's hit it on page 46 of the appendix. So it's not complete. So she's really misrepresented the view of her own historic preservation planner. Number 14, we should not use the power of any office or seeker to obtain special advantage. It's not a matter of public knowledge, nor in the public interest. Having the family farm sold for a possible inheritance of $2 to $3 million, that's public interest violation.
Ed, I'm going to stop you for just a minute. If you could make sure your lavalier mic's a little closer.
Okay.
Some of the comments that are coming in, that your sound is fading in and out.
Fading in and out?
So.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this off. How's that? Is that better?
We'll see as soon as someone types a comment.
Okay.
Pray continue.
All right. We shall not accept work for a fee or pro bono that we know we cannot perform in the profits required by the prospective client. In this case, the public is part of the client as well. And you can't do it in 30 days. The law requires beyond 30 days. We should not fail to disclose the interest of our client or employer when participating in the planning process, nor shall we participate in an effort to conceal the true interest of our client or employer. Again, I think the involvement with the family farm has kind of clouded this whole issue on us. Number 22 is a little bit different. We shall not retaliate or threaten retaliation against the person who has filed a charge for ethical misconduct, or another planner who is conducting or who is cooperating with the ethics officer. We're not there yet, but certainly the language and kind of the body language and kind of the tone and everything to the historic preservation planner kind of is intimidating.
Ed, if I can break in for just a moment. We just had a question from Lenora asking, was the uncle the owner of the farm?
Yes.
And yes, the quick answer is yes.
Yes. Yes. And 25, we shall not deliberately nor with reckless indifference commit any wrongful act, whether or not specified in the rules of conduct, that reflects adversely on our professional fitness. I think there's quite a few of these items that would hit that bill right there without much of a stretch. With that, I'd like to ask you, the other panel members, if they have any comments or would like to add to this.
Let's start at the left, and Jeff, you look sort of eager, so why don't you take point?
Thanks, Pat. One of the things that really is interesting is the dynamic between Deborah and Erin about the project. One of the key elements of the Code of Ethics that's really kind of spoken to me is 2B in the aspirational principles, that we shall accept the decision of our client or employer concerning the objectives and nature of the professional services we perform unless the course of action is illegal or plainly inconsistent with our primary obligation to the public interest. I think that's one of the many subtleties in this case study, in that the course of action of providing the Section 106 compliance in the appendix is not necessarily illegal or inconsistent, but the direction to provide that may have been in terms of the relationship with Uncle Stan. If they were to have not put that information in the report or deliberately misrepresented that the property is not historic, for example, that would be a little bit more cut and dry. But it's a fairly subtle circumstance.
And I think you're spot on. If we don't know what the normal planning report from Dell looks like, if they always stuff such things in the appendix section, they could argue that was their methodology. If, however, everything would have had mention in an executive summary or opening text, then it screams that this is obfuscation to a fine level.
Right.
Tony, how about some comments from you?
Excuse me. Thank you. I think that Ed really answered the question as to what the ethical violations were on the part of Deborah. Part of this that it really intrigues me is what we would do in counseling Erin and her actions. And I was gratified when she said that I will stay neutral and just stick to the regulations because I can't let my own emotions get mixed up with work. And although she is not a member of AICP, I think that it's incumbent upon us to, if we were counseling her, to counsel her in accordance with these rules of conduct, particularly rule number 25.
Just a quick observation would be that perhaps we could say that Erin was more adhering to our code of ethics than Debbie was.
Yes.
Debbie heard Uncle Stan say
And
2 to 3 million, and she was already envisioning a brand new Camaro and where she was moving to. Yeah.
And that's one of the ironies in this, that the AICP member is not adhering to the code, and the non-AICP member appears to be inclined to do that.
I think it goes back to something that Glenn said in his opening remarks about rarely is a situation cut and dried.
Right.
And to have a code of ethics be like, as every woman in the viewing audience will know, the familiar thing with the pantyhose of one size fits all, it's another fantasy. So, Connie, you're sitting there smiling. Let's have some comments from you.
Hi, Pat. Hi, audience, ladies and gentlemen. It's Connie Holland. Pleasure to be with you today. Because of my current job, I think what I honed in on, or what really jumped out at me, was making sure that the public really had input into this and that the proper information was getting to the council to make a decision. And I think there were several violations, which I think Ed did a good job of speaking about, but our principles to which we aspire, the overall responsibility to the public, I mean, we shall promote excellence of design and endeavors to conserve and preserve the integrity and the heritage of the natural built environment. And did you see what was up on the screen? It was horrendous, this beautiful historic structure, and all of a sudden the site plan, it was like, just hardly couldn't believe it. And I would hope that the public would never let this go through. I know it wouldn't happen in Delaware. We shall pay special attention to the interrelatedness of the decisions, and I think talking about all the people that should have been, the information that should have been in this report simply wasn't there, and that decisions may come from on high, maybe even at the federal government, where this couldn't happen. And as we all know in this room today, I think maybe in the olden days, as we call it in the planning profession, we have had to fast track things, and I found in my line of work and in my 40 years of service, a fast track never works, just causes all kinds of problems. To our rule of conduct, we shall not deliberately or with recklessness, indifference, fail to provide adequate, timely, clear, and accurate information. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, this was just being stuffed down somebody's throat. And so it was a great skit. Kudos to everybody that wrote it. It's real life, and I think Ed did a good job of saying what the problems were with this issues. But I think they need to sit down and maybe have that the planners and the people on that staff look at what the rules of conduct were, because there was an AICP regulations we have to hear, but as what I think you'll hear today several times, most local jurisdictions also have rules of conduct, and I think just about all of them were violated in this skit. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. Yeah, right from the state planning director's wisdom. Let me go back through, and I'm going to ask Peter to scroll through some of the comments that were received as the skit went on and throughout the discussion. Let's take a little bit of time here. One of the questions that came up was, were there any other planners in the office? And the skit is silent on that. I think we were left to believe that it may have been a two-man shop, in which case it's an even more unholy atmosphere. Panel, you want to comment on that?
This is Ed O'Donnell here. The question comes up, there's a parallel question, should Deborah recluse herself immediately? I don't know whether she has any staff that she could, basically assign to besides Erin. I don't know whether Erin is in a position to really carry forth the proposal to the council, if you will. So that's an unknown at this point as to whether. Certainly, from Erin's perspective, or from Deborah's perspective, if I were Deborah and I received a phone call like that, the next phone call would be to the Ethics Commission stating that that phone call was made. I hereby removing myself from this case. Because the damage is done as soon as that phone call and this conversation has taken place, as far as I'm concerned.
And that's very true, but one thing we reflected way back when we wrote this originally was you can make that phone call to Paul Farmer in Chicago, but Paul Farmer's not going to be the one who's signing your paycheck, and a lot of times there really are the critical issues where if you're following your higher nature, your gut, your spirit, however you want to phrase it, or certainly just the bottom line being the code of ethics, you may be putting your means of employment on the line. Is there a case for a lawsuit? I'm not a lawyer, don't even play one on TV. But, a lot of people don't have the financial wherewithal to go down that path. So it becomes a lot of soul searching. Jeff, you had your hand up.
In so many of these circumstances, there, as I mentioned before, a lot of subtlety. The code really does speak directly to this issue, though. Point 6 is, we shall not perform work on a project if there is a possibility for direct personal or financial gain to us.
Right.
So
and that very clearly speaks to, Deborah should have said right there, Uncle Stan, you just soured the pot and gone to the mayor and said something immediately.
I can't do this.
Yeah. And that would have been the highest and best road, I believe. Let me share with you one other comment that's come in here on the web, and it reads, land use decisions are supposed to be made as part of the public record in Florida. The mayor's communication to the planner might be illegal. Good comment. Again, I'm not an attorney. I can't make that pronouncement, but it's a very good observation. Can you scroll back a little more, Peter? Let's see. Someone has asked, oops, can you go back? How would you coach the non-professional planner to not, quote, stick to the rules, but move towards filing a charge of misconduct under C5? Folks, I throw that back to you. Or maybe that's something we need to forward to our noble leader, because that is a higher level question.
Pat,
yes.
I'd like to just add, this is Connie Holland again. Actually, in my career, what I found out, and David Edgell, who's with us today, he's one of the planners in my office, very involved with AICP. Some of you might know him. The first thing I would tell anyone was inform your boss. That doesn't help sometimes because, Pat, you've said it, your job may be in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that several times from other colleagues. Well, I have to follow the guidelines that have been given to me for this job. I would hope that somewhere in the office or in the jurisdiction there is an attorney, and I would say go to your attorney and lay it out on the line just for your ethical, for your personal, because God forbid you did lose that job, someone else would want to hire you. And one thing that's worked for me in my professional career is, and I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of people, and they have accepted it, my comments in this vein. You hired me to give you the very best information I can as an AICP planner. I do understand that you, as someone that's been elected, has a different power. So please let me give you that information. I've even said that at public hearings. This is the information. If in fact you get information contrary to that, or it can be disputed, then you have the right to look at it further or make the final decision. And it's made my life a little easier. It has complicated my life from time to time, but I think you'll always find as a planner, if you stay on the straight and narrow, as we're talking today, and if it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, it is a duck. We come from a very, very small state. They laugh and they say either I've been married to the person, or went to school with a person, or work with a person, so therefore I know everybody. I had a second cousin, if we have a moment, that came with an application. I didn't touch the application. I didn't sit at the diocese. I didn't put the report together. I wasn't even in the building when it was heard. So I think if you can adhere to that, it might make your life a little easier.
I think the words are excellent, Connie, and it's always better to err on the side of being overly ethical. There's no amount of money in the world is worth what your reputation is. And once that has been sullied, Donald Trump can bring his checkbook and it's not going to bring it back to what it was.
Excellent point.
Let me bring up one other comment that has come up on the website, and then once we do that, we'll probably need to move on. The comment is, it seems that Deborah didn't know the farm was owned by a family member until she got the call. What happens if Uncle Stan never made the call and the ownership discovery was made after the project was approved? How would Deb prove it was not a conflict?
Wow.
It's very difficult to prove there wasn't a conflict.
Certainly here in Delaware, where everybody's related to somebody.
Right. But on the face of it, you'd have to assume, okay, she honestly didn't know. But by the same token, it's a small town. She knows where the project is. She knows her family. Why wouldn't she know it's her family farm?
And an excellent point as well. Maybe he never revealed it before he left for his 15-year vacation in the big house.
Whatever, came back from prison, whatever it was. But it'd be very difficult to do that. Somebody on some of the comments that we received here talk about transparency and the need to have that. That's part of the transparency. If you know something, even though it's not been stated, you still have to make that known, just to protect that public process, so the transparency is there.
And
that's the trust element that comes in public service.
And Glenn put it in his remarks at the beginning where he said planners must exercise common sense as well. Again, sometimes common sense is not common, but we would hope that would be so. Peter, are we ready for our second skit? Okay, let's roll the cameras.
Financial hardship and developer greed is not limited to the town of Dell. The Planning Commission of Blackwell County, Delaware, has before it an attractive proposal that may save the county. But at what cost to both taxpayers and the county's AICP planner, Erlene Smithson? Let's find out as the thespians return, because there's lithium in them there hills.
Rural Blackwell County, Delaware, has been struggling with a stagnant economy and a lack of economic development and job growth for years. Much of the farmland is swampy and has less production than other parts of the state. The county has had little luck enticing other employers to locate in the county. The residents are weary and eager for change, a sentiment echoed by the county council. But then out of the blue, an economic development opportunity presents itself that looks like it could save the county. Listen in on the Planning Commission meeting where it will be discussed for the first time in public.
I would like to call this meeting of the Blackwell Planning Commission to order. Tonight we have the conditional use application for Eco Resource Mining Corporation, LLC, to allow for an extractive use in the southern area of our county. First, I would like to call the applicant to the podium to give a presentation about their application.
Good evening, members of the Commission. I'm Marvin Leswell, the CEO of Eco Resources Mining Corporation, LLC. I have tremendously good news for this fine county of yours. My corporation has located a sizable deposit of lithium in your southern territories. You may not know it yet, but in order to rid our nation from the dependency on foreign oil and save the world from greenhouse effect and global warming, we're going to have to all start driving electric cars. Electric cars are just months away from production, and most will run on lithium-ion batteries. The market demand will be huge, and we need lots of lithium, and that we can get. That's why we are now proposing to invest over $1 billion, and that's billion with a B, dollars in your community over the next 5 years mining this lithium. The property owners will all benefit directly, but everyone in your county will prosper because of our investment. There will be jobs in mining, of course, but think of the need for housing, restaurants, shopping centers, doctors, new utilities, building permit fees, and the list just goes on. So I ask you tonight to grant our conditional use request so we can defeat the terrorists by reducing our need for their oil. This approval will ensure economic prosperity for your county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leswell. Are there any questions from the Commission?
Well, yeah. Mr. Leswell, how will you mine the lithium?
Well, thank you for asking that. That's a great question. Lithium lies just below the surface and is found throughout the southern part of the county. Fortunately, it is not hard to get to at all. When we secure the rights to the farmer's land, we bring in some really big excavators and dump trucks and just start scooping it up. Here's a picture of one of our other mining operations.
Okay, what happens when you are done?
Well, this goes on for some time, at least 5 years or so.
And then what?
Well, we will come back to you to discuss, it then. By that time, we may be able to find some technology to use the other stuff we dig out. Then maybe just fill in the hole and plant some trees. You can pick the trees.
If there are no further questions, I'd like to ask our county planner to give their report and recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioners. I have reviewed the application and first would like to acknowledge the economic impacts of this type of project. I did some research in other counties where lithium mining is taking place, and indeed the short-term economic gain is large. Not only is there likely to be substantial direct investment by the company, but the workers filling the jobs will need housing and services. The town of Blackwell will likely see a boom in construction and associated infrastructure investment. However, I do have some concerns. First, such a large influx of population in a short period of time will require both the town and the county to invest huge sums on infrastructure. Second, this boom will only last for 5 years or so, at which time the workers will leave and we may be no better off than we are now. And finally, the mining lands will be environmentally decimated and will never recover. There will be no going back to farming. This will impact our long-term economy, water quality, and our quality of life in general. Blackwell County may turn out to be a place that none of us wants to live after mining is over. So I recommend that we table the application and do a detailed...
Madam Chairman, excuse me, Madam Chairman. I think what our fine planner is trying to say is that we would need to do some more studies to accommodate the mining company, but there's really no reason at this point to delay this application.
Actually, that is not what I was suggesting at all.
Are you quite sure of that?
I would like to add that we are not in any position to delay. It takes a while to move all that earth and get to the lithium. These cars are coming on the market really soon, and every day another polar bear loses an ice floe that he calls home. Who wants that on their conscience?
Order! With all due respect, County Administrator, I think we've heard enough. Discussion?
You know, both sides really do have good points. We need economic development in a bad way. I can't even sell all my antiques at flea market and pay my bills right now. Last week, my nephew got notice that they're foreclosing on his trailer. I mean, it's just a trailer, and he can't hold on to it. Times are hard, and polar bears or no polar bears, we need help now.
I can appreciate that times are tough for all of us, but I have to ask, what are we going to end up with? Yes, we can all make some money for 5 years or so, but then what? If the land is all torn up and there is no plan to restore it, who will want to come live here then? What will we be leaving for our kids? Our planner has always tried to give us both sides of the story, and I say we give her another month to do some research before we make a difficult decision.
I tend to agree. If this is such a good deal today, it will be a good deal a month from now. As they say, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Do I hear a motion?
I move we table the application to allow our planner to do a more detailed study.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Earlene, the long-suffering planner, is a county native. She's no stranger to controversy, but is this one just too much for her to handle? Her night is not yet over. Look now as she's walking back to her office. Someone from her past would like a word with her.
Earlene, you traitor. Wait up, it's me, Cousin Bobby. We need to talk.
What do you want, Bobby? I already paid you that money I owed you from the poker game at the last family reunion. And don't you ever try to get me to drink that stuff again. I was sick for 3 days.
Now look here, Earlene. This ain't much about reunion or poker and all. I can't help if you got a weak stomach. I want to talk about real money. You know, this family's never had a chance like this. Except maybe you, miseducated college person. You've always been a no-good smarty pants, always looking down your nose on me and all of us working on the farm, and you're always wanting to wait and see and do another report or study. You got no common sense in these matters.
Don't blame me that you never got off the farm. I told you to get your GED.
I don't care anything about a GED thing. I've been busting my hump since we were kids on the farm. And besides, nature is here to serve us. You got to remember how hard it is to work on this farm in the swamp. It's wet and there are bugs and snakes. Now this family's got a real chance, a chance at a big payoff.
You wouldn't know what to do with all of that money. You would waste it. And what about the farm? It would be gone.
See, this is what I was talking about. All of this education, no common sense. It doesn't matter a thing about the farm as long as we get paid. From what I see, none of us are going to want to live here after they're done anyway. As for me, I'm packing up the truck and moving north, perhaps to Hokessen. Imagine that. Me living next door to Crazy Joe. Me and Linda sunning ourselves by the pool. Maybe a new metal outbuilding for my woodpile. A new tractor. Why, I might even trade an old Ford for a Range Rover with heated leather seats. I wonder if Range Rover makes a dually with a diesel engine.
So it is all about the money.
You're still in the will, Earlene. You don't have as big a percentage as me, but it may be enough for you to get out of here for good. If you're smart enough, you'd do it.
Earlene retreats to her office to collect her thoughts. She was not ready to have it out with Bobby again. The two of them had gone at it for years. She barely has time to reflect on the task of researching the possible consequences of mining when she is painfully reminded that her employer may have other ideas about her study.
Smithson, what in the wide world of sports was that crap you just pulled in there? That is not what we talked about before the meeting.
Ma'am, you know about my concerns. Hey, I agreed with you about the economic impact.
As well you should. But what about all the other crap about the long term? What does the long term matter if we can't make ends meet today?
It means everything. I have to think about the long-term consequences of present actions. I am a planner.
Oh, excuse me while I sing the Star-Spangled Banner. That's all well and good, but you don't have to say things like that at the meeting, though. We need this company's investment now. Remember, I don't work for you. You work for me. Simple concept. And we both work for council. And they don't want this delayed. If we lose this mining contract to another county, we are toast. Toast. And you know what that means?
I'm doing my job.
Yeah, but with you and your concept of job is always doing more studies. Unless we get some economic development here and tax money, we may both be out of a job. And then you can do your studies at home as long as you want. You put that in your study. I've just about had it with you. I'm going to walk out of here, and I'm going to take a look at your personnel file, and I think be in my office tomorrow morning, and we'll look at it together.
Kids, all I wanted was for you to grow up and know the county the way I did when I was living on the farm.
Her present employment very much in question, Earlene calls it a night. Walking out to the car, she comes face to face with a man who never seems to make sense. But does he?
Miss Smithson, Miss Smithson.
Oh, hi, Daniel. What are you protesting tonight? Trying to save the polar bears?
You did a very courageous thing in there, standing up to the administrator. She is so mean and so short-sighted.
Well, I may have won the battle but lost the war. She is my boss, you know, and the county council just wants economic development right now. But really, what are you out here for tonight anyway?
I'm trying to save our county from those strip miners. This whole thing has made me see my hybrid in a whole new light. I can't even bear to drive it now. I didn't know it was so environmentally damaging building those batteries. I want to stop global warming and save the polar bears too, but we shouldn't have to give up our county to do it. I need your help. We need your help.
Who is we? I just see you, and you come to every single meeting. I appreciate your input, but one person does not make a movement.
Don't you understand? I'm standing up for all the people who are not represented at every single meeting, and for the future, because they are not yet here to defend themselves.
I know. I was just thinking about my kids and what we are going to be leaving for them. If my cousin and the council get their way, it won't be much, but they'll have the money to move away. Tomorrow I've got to get my butt chewed out again first thing, then start working on next month's report. So folks, what am I going to do?
Why not start by giving me a ride? I left my hybrid at home and the bus doesn't run this late. Remember, carpooling is good for the environment, and it's the small things we do that add to big changes.
Erin is sure in a tough spot between the Planning Commission, her boss, her worries about her children's future, and her cousin's pressure. Assume that she caves in and presents the conclusion that everyone seems to want, which is that this project will bring both short and long-term benefits to the county and should be approved. What violations of the Code of Ethics do you find? Let's return to our live panel and hear both their and your takes on what we have just heard.
All right. Okay, let's try that again. Let's head back to the panel discussion. And this time I've asked Connie Holland to take the lead on summing up the various little attacks on our code that have been made within this skit. So Connie, if you want to take it from here.
Thank you, Pat. I'm going to do it a little different. This is near and dear to my heart, and if you'll give me just 1 minute, I'm going to explain why I really do know what the violations are. In a previous life in my career, I was county planning director, and I can use this gentleman's name because he's no longer with us, and you can take that however you'd like to. But his name was Fred, and I think you all have one in your community. He would rather ask forgiveness than actually do the right thing. So I got a call, and they said, Mrs. Holland, there's a huge, huge hole in the property next to us. What do you suppose it is? Well, it was in a time when the state of Delaware was actually putting on State Route 1, and every farmer and every landowner wanted to have what we call borrow pit in our state, but extractive use. So I thought I'd better go with the building inspector and see what this hole was about. So we go out to the property, and there's Fred with a backhoe, and it is a huge hole. And I said, Fred, what are we doing here? Well, he said, I'm digging a hole. I'm digging a pond. Everybody was digging a pond in those days. I said, well, that's fine. You have a farm, 10 acres, that's the definition in Delaware. But you can't, what are you doing with the matter that you're taking out of it, material taken out of it? Well, I'm selling it. I said, okay, can't do that. You can take that material and put it anywhere on your property, but you can't do that. So you have to cease and assist if it's going off the property. Yes, ma'am. I always got yes, ma'am. 4 or 5 days later, the people said, do you want to come out and see that you're not doing your job because there's trucks lined up? And by the way, they have Dell stickers on them. That's our Department of Transportation in this state. I said, yes, ma'am, I'll be right out there. So there we go again. And I said, Fred, you cannot do that. You're making the state look bad. They're not aware you don't have a conditional use. That's what you have to do in the state of Delaware. After a lot of language that I won't bore you with, he swore he'd come in and apply. Well, he did. But before the council, this is what he said when he stood up. First of all, I want my money back for my conditional use because I'm saving taxpayers in this state of Delaware a ton of money because I'm just giving that soil and sand to the state, which he wasn't. And furthermore, you should be so pleased with me because after this is over, this is going to be a county swimming pool. So the fact of the matter is this is a wonderful thing, and I just want to hand it to you. As my council's all gasping, one council member says, we better think about this. Wouldn't it be a great idea? And I'm like, there's no children out there. There's no people out there who are going to come to the swimming pool. So as we're laughing through this, this is real life. This gentleman had no idea of how he was going to reclaim that area. The state of Delaware had no idea that he really didn't have a conditional use because this is about 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and they didn't check. And it just kept rolling on and on. And think about all the problems that we had with ethics in this scenario. Back to the skit. I think the violations that we actually have seen here is the fact of the matter, our overall responsibility to the public. I think Erin was wonderful. She realized that she was not giving, I kind of marked it, we have special concern for long-range consequences. Erin was extremely aware, as were several others, that this might be the short-term fix. But this was a farming community, and the fact of the matter is they were in dire straits, but they may never come back. Someone may, excuse the term, rape this land and have no restoration plan for it, and you couldn't even have the farming community that you had before. So she was well aware of that. She was well aware that she needed to pay special attention to the interrelatedness of the decision. She saw what was coming. F, we shall seek special justice by working to expand choice and opportunities of all people and recognizing a special responsibility to plan for everyone, for the disadvantaged, and for the economic environment. And I think she was aware of that. There again, this was a quick fix. It probably wasn't going to help anyone except the developer. And if it got tough for the developer, I think maybe, and this is just my opinion, he might have skipped town too, and away we would have been with a great big extractive use with no restoration plan. The design and the conservation and to preserve the integrity, that's G. That wasn't happening either. Our responsibility to our profession and colleagues, I think the planner, I think she was a pretty good planner. I think she wanted to educate the public about the issues and the relevance to their daily lives, and going down the rules of conduct. She was trying to deliberately give them adequate and timely and clear information. She wasn't allowed to do that. There were just many, many things here. Number 6 in our Code of Ethics, we shall not perform work with a client in addition to the agreed upon compensation of our client and our employer, and there was a possibility of direct personal financial gain. We've heard that in both of these skits. Poor Arlene, you know, with the cousin coming to her and kind of putting her in a situation where she was, I think she no way wanted that money, but didn't want to put her family at a disadvantage, and of course he made her think about her kids in the future. Private discussions went on too that she probably should have walked away from your old cousin Bobby. He wasn't helping her. And the county administrator, that was a whole other scenario that, as I talked about when I gave comments when we first were introduced, she was looking at losing her job. And she was in a clear dilemma of how to keep her job, but also work with her, with the county administrator. So she was in quite a pickle. And I'll turn it over to Ed or anybody else on the staff that has comments about
Jeff,
this.
you were
I see this, again, as being a very difficult thing to resolve, and especially given the economic situation that many of us are in these days. We have special concern in this case for the long-range consequences of present actions that the planner has been talking about, but the very next point in the code is we shall pay special attention to the interrelatedness of decisions. And the issue that's at point here is it's very difficult to view long-term issues and short-term gain on an even footing. I think she has done, potential financial interest aside, and we can talk about that later, I think she's done a pretty good job of presenting the information the way that it should be presented without specifically drawing conclusions. And oftentimes we're placed in positions where our advice is not so much welcomed as our presentation of the facts, and allowing an elected body like the Planning Commission in this case to make a decision based on those facts.
I think you're spot on there. I mean, I'm sure every planner in this room right now has at more than one occasion felt like you were tolerated rather than rejoiced because you were in the room. So. Tony.
This is a case study, if you will, that has a lot of nuance associated with it. There's a metamorphosis with the planner. At one point, she thinks about her kids and is clearly thinking about the long-range consequences. And then, as we go on, I think that she's caving in under the pressure of the administrator, and the prospect for financial gain, and she's thinking about, instead of the future that her kids have in the community, she's thinking about the money that her kids will derive and benefit from the decision. So she's clearly got a lot of pressures that have caused her to change the direction in which she originally wanted to go in. And I think that the problems are many, including where the activist says that he represents the people who aren't there. All of us who are planners who present projects before planning commissions, we hear the developers say, and it's sort of a silent majority ploy, that, well, yeah, there are 10 people here speaking against this, but there are probably 50 more people who are in favor of it. Similarly, the opposition to projects, they pull the same thing. So it's a very complicated set of issues, but clearly, number one, she should have recused herself.
Okay. Ed, I've let you be quiet for too long.
I was going to say, I agree with Tony's last comments. As soon as Bobby made the overtures, she was done, as far as I was concerned. I just would have taken myself out of that process. Here's another problem, though. When that administrator came in here and said, remember, I don't work for you, you work for me, and we both work for council. Well, what the administrators are getting, obviously, is they all work for the residents of that county.
Right.
And they're the people that they ought to be representing.
And that's a very valid point, but how many times have threats been made like that? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was one of the things that was crafted into that particular skit. Things that would highlight one of the points within the code, not necessarily being mangled, but certainly being, give-slapped as somebody went by.
Well, she's definitely being pulled two ways, obviously. She wants to do the right thing, mm-hmm. and she's trying to do the right thing. Now she's paying the price for having done the right thing at the first hearing. Now the question is, can she do the right thing on the second phase of this? And now she's quibbling with herself.
Mm-hmm. True.
But she's been compromised by the economic gain possibility. Yeah.
True. One of the comments that's come in on the web here is, and I'm going to paraphrase, asking if we had to include so many violations of the code, both the aspirational and the code of ethics, in each skit, saying that, and forgive me if I've gotten this wrong, person, if real situations aren't a little more clear-cut than that, where only one or two things happen. The peanut gallery sitting at the back of the room is shaking their head and laughing in a pleasant, harmonious fashion about that one. Jeff, you want to address that?
I think if you take the whole issue of financial gain out of this case study, I think it really is one of the more subtle ones that I've seen, simply because the actions that the planner has taken to this point generally seem to me to be fairly consistent with the Code of Ethics. I think she's really taken a lot of the competing elements and tried to provide pretty good objective information about that. The really pointed question that she provided at the end, I think, is something for us to consider. And if you look at 2B under aspirational principles, we shall accept the decisions of our employer mm-hmm. concerning the objectives unless the course of action is illegal. I don't really think it is here, or plainly inconsistent with our primary obligation to the public interest. In this case, is our primary obligation to the long-term future, or is our primary obligation to the short-term gain? So I don't know if it's really, I know what my personal position would be, and it would probably mirror hers, but I'd be interested in the rest of the panel's take on whether she's violating 2B, or whether she really does just need to take her employer's opinion into account.
I know personally, after having gone through all the study for this session and in preparation, I would be very much inclined to pick up the phone and call Paul Farmer at this point, just simply to, as a check of my own compass.
That's a really good idea.
Connie.
I would just like to reiterate that I think this is just a real-life skit. Both of them have. As I explained before I started this, or after it was over, this happened in the office of Kent County, Delaware, monthly, and we see it all over the state. And I believe that you really have to look at the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct and live by them and ask questions of an attorney or Paul Farmer and get that information, because it's never that cut and dry. It really is just never that cut and dry.
And I couldn't agree with you more. What I'd like to do, I'm looking at the clock right now, and I want to make a couple comments, and then I'm going to go back to our panel members because I've asked each of them to share a horror story or a pearl of wisdom with us. One of the things that had come to mind for me, some of you folks, if you're baby boomers like I am, may remember from sometime in the 80s there was a show called Herman's Head. And this individual was presented on a weekly basis with some moral dilemma. And it didn't have to be, whether to save the world or whatever, but something that was of import to that particular generation. And then you saw what was going on inside his head. There were 4 different components. One was the woman who played the angel and the sweet, better nature, and everything was sweetness and light. And then there was the big Bubba kind of guy who would, belch, scratch, have a beer, and go at it his way. And then you had 2 more tempestuous personalities. And in some ways, in reflecting on ethics, we all suffer from Herman's Head at different times in our careers. You just have to be aware of that fact and always try to take the higher road. One of the things I've generated in my own experience has been something that I refer to as either the egg principle or the egg balance, and egg standing for ego, glory, and greed. And when those are all kept in check to a certain extent, we operate as moral people in this society of ours. And yet when they're left unchecked, then we have things such as what we heard with Mr. Lesswell and his strip mining and the other villains of our plays. So that's my attempt at pearls of wisdom, and I'm going to turn it back. And Tony, you've been fairly quiet, so I'm going to pick on you first if you want to start.
In my 40-some years of experience, I thankfully have never encountered, but for one, I had a situation where a lady said, "Can I bribe you?" And I
got told clarity and transparency, right?
I take it she thought that I was not given to subtlety, so she'd put it right out there. So I let her know in no uncertain terms that was not the case. But in those situations, the conflicts are much more subtle, and sometimes not so much a question of right or wrong, but perhaps a question of professional propriety. My personal likes as a professional planner, what do I bring to a situation, listening to the arguments of the public, listening to the arguments of the developer, and in the final analysis, one has to stick to the ordinances, the regulations, and has to do that in a fair and objective way. But only once was I offered a bribe. I don't even know what it was. We never got that far.
Okay. Jeff, how about you?
Well, I appreciate you inviting someone from the dark side of consulting to the panel, because oftentimes, having been worked with a lot of other firms and seen what they do, I think there tends to be, I don't know, a little bit of, it's not overt gifts or things, but some behavior, going out to dinner together or something like that, that really kind of treads on the gray area of 0.5 about receiving something from someone who may be involved in a decision. So I think we who are involved in consulting to the public sector really need to be very careful and sometimes maybe a little, I guess, uppity about making sure that we don't present even the appearance of there being a conflict. One point that really stuck out to me that I hadn't noticed a lot in the code before we started preparing for this is the idea of point 16. We shall not accept work that we know cannot be performed within the promptness required by the prospective client. In my business, I I work on a lot of projects that are funded by grants. And it's very common for a client to not realize quite how much time they're taking to issue a request for proposals and review that request for proposals, and eventually they realize they're up against it in terms of getting the work done before that grant expires. And it can really be a difficult position to be in when you realize you have 6 or 9 months worth of work to do and 3 months to do it in. Fortunately, we've been able to work with them to get extensions for grants or things like that. But if there were a situation where they couldn't get an extension and we were selected for a project and asked to enter a contract, I'm not sure we could in good conscience do that, knowing that we couldn't get the work done.
I can sympathize because I've been for a brief period of time on the dark side. So, okay, I'm going to move ahead. We have about 3.5 minutes for Connie and Ed to split.
Okay. Picking up on Jeff's commentary on transparency and accepting the gray area, if you will, of gifts. During my tenure with the county, we had a very high-profiled developer representative who basically insisted on taking me to lunch to discuss his client's application. And I refused. I just would not go to lunch with him. And this got to the point where he would come to the office sometimes 2, 3 times a week trying to get me to lunch. And finally just saying, look, you cannot take me to lunch. You have something to discuss about your applicant and your application. We'll discuss it in the office. And that also allowed me the luxury of bringing in other staff people if I don't know the answer to your question.
Ed, are you sure it was about the project?
Pardon me? What was that?
Love you dearly. Keep on. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, it was it was hard for that person to understand from the dark side, if you will, that one, I wasn't going to entertain him or entertain a lunch with him. But the other problem is, let's say I did do that and I went out. And let's say developer B was in the room when I was having lunch and saw me having lunch with developer A. Oh, that's how we get this process going. We take out the director to lunch, you know, that kind of thing. So perception is everything in public service. If it looks bad, you have a tough road to hoe right to there. So you've got to avoid that perception.
Amen, brother. Connie, mop it up.
I'll hurry up. It's really funny. My heater went out, and if anybody knows me, you know everything about me because I came in the office and I started, I have to get a heater, how much it's going to cost, well, this, that, and the other. So I started contacting people, and all of a sudden it said, I'll give you a great deal, Mrs. Holland, you know, and I went through 2 or 3 of these, and I realized that through the process somehow they had either come through for rezoning, they had a conditional use, you know, they were a developer, they were going to come back to me, they were a home builder, and I go, oh wow. So I had a really great George Gardner, God bless him, he's in heaven now, but he was my attorney to go to, and I said, George, what do I do? He said, well, we just got to find somebody that you haven't worked with, and I had to pay more for that heater. I had to go to the most expensive person in the state to get it because they hadn't been through the county process. We hadn't touched each other in any way. And people said, why was I so worried about that? And I will say to all of you who are listening, planners are never going to get rich. I'm not going to, I just hope on my tombstone they say, she was a hoot and she didn't take any bribes. So I hope that helps you out.
Absolutely. My tombstone's going to say clearance at the top because that's what my husband will buy. Okay. I really want to thank all the folks who have sent comments in. You've been wonderful. We've been having a blast sitting here reading them. We've been trying to answer them as they came. But to let you know, what we're going to do is once we close this session, we're going to sit here and collect the comments. If you have put your contact information there, we'll try to get back to you. Or what we may do is send them all on to Paul Farmer and let him know these are the concerns that are out here. Some of the comments are really very, very good, and I thank you for those. I do offer my apologies to the individual who was upset about developers being called on the dark side, but you know, that's not my mea culpa. That was brought up by the gentleman who's sitting over there who is working for a consulting firm. So what can I say? All righty. Again, I'd like to thank Connie Holland, Ed O'Donnell, Tony DiGiacomo, Jeff Rigner for sitting here and letting me have an absolute blast working with you folks. And all of us want to thank Dr. Peter von Glahn for putting together the electronics for this presentation. We would not function without Peter, so that's a definite. And I have to say this to close, as a scene from one of the films of Men in Black, when the little aliens were hailing the person who was, responsible for answering all questions. They said all hail Z, but I think we have to go all hail Paul, because Paul is the ultimate be-all and end-all in terms of answering the questions on ethics. So you got to love a man who's willing to act like Father Confessor to 50,000 people. So Paul, we wish you good health for many, many years to come. And I believe I need to turn it over for our closing remarks now.
This concludes the webcast. I want to thank the members of the Delaware chapter that have performed in the skits: Bill Brokenbrough, Mike Hahn, Andre Terblisi, Pat Malli, Janelle Cornwell, Herb Inden, Peter von Glahn, and our narrator, Derek Lightfoot. This session has been approved for 1 1/2 ethics CM credits. Be sure to check at utah-apa.org/webcasts for further presentations from our co-sponsors. Thanks for joining us.